I want to start my story with a moment I will never forget. A moment that still comes back to me when the nights are too quiet and the world feels a little heavier than usual. It was late. I remember the house felt cold, even though the heater was running. I remember the way the clock sounded too loud, as if every tick was warning me that something was about to break. And I remember my wife, Emily, sitting at the edge of our bed with her hands shaking and her eyes refusing to meet mine. I did not know then what she was about to tell me, but I knew it was going to change something inside me forever. I could feel it, the same way you feel a storm coming long before the rain ever touches the ground. I stood there in the doorway, watching her. She looked so small, so fragile, like a woman who had been carrying a weight for far too long. And for a second, I almost told her she did not have to say anything. But silence has its own way of hurting people, and we had been silent for too long. I walked closer, slowly, carefully, as if one wrong move might shatter everything between us. When I sat beside her, the mattress dipped, and I saw her swallow hard. "Emily," I whispered, "what's wrong?" She did not answer at first. She just breathed out, long and shaky, like she had been holding the air for years. Then she said something I never expected to hear. "I haven't been honest with you." Those words, they didn't hit like a punch. They didn't hit like anger. They landed more like a quiet ache in the chest, the kind that spreads slowly, the kind you don't even feel fully until much later. I felt my hands go cold. "What do you mean?" I asked. She ran a hand through her hair, pulling it back like she was trying to gather courage one strand at a time. "There are things I hid from you," she said. "Things from before we met. Things from after. Things I should have told you long ago." That was the moment, the exact moment, when my heart began to change shape. Not break. Not yet. But shift. Like a door that had been locked for years was suddenly being pushed open. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse her. I didn't demand anything. I just waited. Sometimes waiting is the only kindness you can offer a person who is falling apart. Emily took another breath, and for the first time that night, she looked at me. Really looked at me. Her eyes were red, wet, full of guilt and fear and exhaustion. And that was when I realized, whatever she was hiding, it had been eating her alive. "I need to tell you everything," she whispered. "But I'm scared of what it will do to us." The room felt even colder. I felt like I could hear her heartbeat. Maybe it was my own. Maybe it was both. "Just talk to me," I said quietly. "We'll face it together. But I will be honest with you." I didn't know if that was true. I didn't know if together was something we could still be. I just knew she needed to hear those words before she could speak her truth. And she did. But before she confessed anything, she asked me something that still echoes in my mind. "Do you love me enough to hear the whole truth?" That question felt heavier than anything she could have confessed. Because love, real love, isn't always soft. It isn't always warm. Sometimes it's sharp. Sometimes it's cruel. Sometimes it asks you to walk through fire without knowing if you'll come out the same person. "I do," I said. And in that moment, I meant it with everything I had. Emily nodded slowly, and her shoulders finally dropped, as if she had been holding the world up with her bare hands, and she could finally set it down. The truth she told me that night. It broke me. I won't pretend it didn't. I won't pretend I handled it perfectly. I won't pretend it didn't change everything. But the reason I'm telling this story now, the reason I'm opening my life to strangers, is because the breaking wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something I didn't expect. A lesson. A truth. A kind of peace that only comes after you've lived through a storm you never saw coming. But before peace came pain. And before the lesson came the hurt. Emily shifted closer to me, as if the movement alone took every bit of strength she had left. And then she whispered the first secret, the one that opened a door to everything else that followed. It wasn't the worst secret she told me, not even close, but it was the one that started the unraveling. And I think a part of me already knew. She looked at me with trembling lips and whispered, "There's someone from my past, someone you don't know about." And just like that, the quiet life I thought I understood began to fall apart. When Emily said those words, "There's someone from my past, someone you don't know about," it felt like the air inside the room suddenly changed temperature. Not warmer, not colder, just different. Like the world paused for a few seconds to let the meaning settle in. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I didn't even blink, I think. Sometimes the only thing your body knows how to do is stay still so your mind can catch up. Emily's hands were shaking again. She tried to hide them by locking her fingers together, but I could still see the tremble in her knuckles. It reminded me of the way someone might hold onto a railing in a storm, hoping the wind doesn't throw them off. Who? I asked, my voice quieter than I expected. She hesitated. Not the kind of hesitation that hides a lie, but the kind that prepares for pain. His name was Daniel, she said softly. Someone I knew before you. Someone I walked away from, or at least I thought I did. She paused and looked toward the window, toward the darkness outside. It was the kind of look people give when they are trying to find strength in something bigger than themselves. I swallowed, feeling something heavy forming in my chest. What does he have to do with us, Emily? She closed her eyes for a second. Just 1 second. But in that moment, I could see the fear she was trying to hide. When you and I met, she said, I told you I was ready for something real. I told you I wanted a fresh start. And that wasn't a lie. I meant it. I wanted you. I chose you. I loved you. Her voice shook. But I never told you how much of my past I was still running from. My heart thudded painfully. Not because she had a past. Everyone has one. But because she said she was running from it. Running means something unfinished. Running means something unresolved. Running means something that can catch up. What happened with him? I asked. She exhaled slowly, the kind of breath you release right before you tell the truth you've been dreading. I thought it was over, she whispered. But he reached out to me a few months ago. My body stiffened. I felt the words hit me like small stones, not enough to break bone, but enough to leave bruises. A few months ago, we were married then. We were building a life. We were making plans, laughing in the kitchen, holding hands on quiet walks. And somewhere in that time, someone else had been part of her thoughts. I didn't want to react too fast. I didn't want to assume the worst. Assumptions have ruined more relationships than the truth ever will. So I stayed still. And I waited. Emily looked at me again, her eyes shiny with tears. He messaged me, she said. Just one message at first. He said he hoped I was happy. He said he missed hearing my voice. She swallowed hard. He said he never stopped loving me. A cold feeling spread through my chest. And what did you say? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. I told him I was married. I told him I loved my husband. I told him I moved on. She paused. But he didn't let it go. The room suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were quietly leaning in. I felt anger forming, but not the loud kind. It was the quiet, heavy anger, the one that settles behind your ribs and waits there. He kept writing to me, she continued, and I kept ignoring him. I thought if I didn't respond, he would stop, but he didn't. She shifted her weight, curling her legs slightly, as if she were cold. I should have told you then, she said. I should have come to you right away. But I was scared you would think I still cared about him. I was scared you would doubt us. Her voice cracked. I didn't want to lose you. I ran a hand over my face. Not because I was angry at her yet, but because the situation felt bigger than I had imagined just minutes earlier. So this is about messages? I asked carefully. About someone from your past who didn't let go? Emily hesitated again, and that hesitation told me there was more. Much more. Not just that, she whispered. There was something I didn't expect. Something that happened after you left for your work trip in September. My stomach tightened. September. A 2-week trip. A hotel room that felt too large. Video calls where she smiled, but somehow her eyes looked tired. What happened in September? I asked. She pressed her fingers to her lips for a moment before dropping her hand. He came to our house. The words hit the air like a sudden drop in temperature. Cold, sharp, undeniable. I stared at her, unable to speak for a moment. He what? He showed up, she said, her voice trembling. He didn't call first. He didn't ask. He just came. He said he needed closure. He said he needed to see me one last time. My heartbeat grew louder in my ears. And you let him in? She breathed shakily. I did. Just for a few minutes. I shouldn't have. I know that now. A mix of emotions surged through me. Hurt, confusion, fear, a strange sense of disbelief. But overriding all of it was a quiet, painful question. Why didn't you tell me? Tears ran down her cheeks now, steady and silent. Because I knew it was wrong. And because I thought if I pretended it never happened, then it wouldn't matter. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself it would make things worse if I brought it up. I thought I could protect you from it. Protect me. That word felt heavy. People always say they hide the truth to protect the ones they love. But most of the time, they're protecting themselves from the consequences. I looked down at my hands. They felt foreign to me, like they didn't belong to the same man who left for that September trip believing everything at home was safe and steady. Did anything else happen? I asked, my voice almost a whisper. Emily shook her head quickly. No, nothing. He talked. I listened. I told him it was over. I told him to move on. Then he left. I swear that's all. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But trust isn't a switch. It doesn't flip on and off. It grows slowly, and it breaks quietly. Why are you telling me now? I asked. Emily looked at me with such sadness it almost hurt to hold her gaze. Because he sent me something 2 days ago. My breath caught. What did he send? She took her phone from the nightstand, unlocked it, and handed it to me with trembling fingers. A message, a photo, a screenshot of a moment, and a single line of text beneath it. I felt my pulse hammering as I looked at the screen. The moment I saw what it was, my world tilted, my throat tightened, my chest felt heavy, and Emily whispered the words I will never forget. I think he's trying to destroy us. I stared at the phone in my hand for a long moment before I found the strength to actually look at the screen. It's strange how something so small, a simple message, a single image, can feel heavier than anything you've ever held. Emily watched me, silent and trembling, as though she already knew the moment would hurt more than anything she had admitted before. The message on the screen was short, just a few words. Words that didn't scream or threaten, but somehow felt colder than any threat could ever be. You should know the truth since she won't tell you. Beneath that line, a picture of Emily. She was standing at our front door. Her arms were crossed tightly. Her face looked tired. Her eyes looked wary. And next to her, just barely visible in the corner of the frame, was a man. Daniel. It wasn't a compromising picture. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing dramatic. But the meaning behind it was sharp enough to cut. He had taken it the day he showed up. He had taken it without her knowing. And now he was using it like a weapon. I felt something settle in my stomach. Not anger yet, but a heavy sadness. The kind that makes your bones feel older. Why would he send this? I asked quietly. Emily wiped her eyes again, her breath shaky. Because he wants attention. Because he wants power. Because he wants to pull me back into something I walked away from. I don't know. I don't understand how someone can hold on to something that ended so long ago. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The picture kept echoing in my mind. Not because it proved anything happened, but because it showed she had been living a moment I knew nothing about. A moment in our home. A moment during our marriage. And she didn't tell me. The silence stretched between us, heavy and uncomfortable. Emily shifted closer, but she didn't reach for me. Maybe she knew I wasn't ready for touch. Maybe she knew I needed air. Please, she whispered, say something. I didn't look at her right away. I kept my eyes on the photo. Emily, I'm trying. She let out a soft, painful sound. Not quite a sob, but close. I should have told you the day it happened, she said. I know that. I was wrong. I panicked. I didn't want to bring chaos into our home. I thought ignoring it would make it disappear. I finally looked at her. But things don't disappear just because we pretend they do. She closed her eyes, nodding. I know. I handed the phone back to her. My hands felt cold again. Is that the only thing he sent? Her throat tightened. I could see it. And that was when I knew the answer was no. There was one more message, she whispered. What was it? Emily slowly unlocked her phone again. Her fingers hesitated over the screen before she turned it toward me. This time, it wasn't a picture. It was a paragraph. A long message. A message filled with manipulation, guilt, nostalgia, and carefully chosen words designed to stir confusion. But there was one line, one single line, that hit harder than the rest. You owe me the truth. He deserves to know we were never really finished. I felt my chest tighten, a slow, painful squeeze. Finished. I repeated. Emily shook her head quickly, desperately. He's twisting everything. I ended things with him years before I met you. He was emotional, unstable at times. He refused to accept that it was over. For a long time, he kept showing up in places I went. Not every day, not every week, but enough that I felt watched. I thought it would stop. I thought leaving him behind would make him disappear from my life. She swallowed hard. And for a while it did. A long silence settled between us again. The kind that doesn't sit between two people. It sits inside them. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, letting the weight of everything sink in slowly. Emily, why didn't you tell me about any of this when we first met? When we were dating? When we were getting married? Her voice cracked. Because I didn't want you to see me as someone who brought problems into your life. I didn't want you to think I was broken. I didn't want you to feel like you were getting someone with a shadow behind her. She wiped her tears again. You were such a good man. You were gentle. You listened. You loved me with this calm, steady love I had never felt before. And I was scared that if you knew everything I had been through, you'd think twice about choosing me. That hurt. Not because she doubted herself, but because she doubted me. I looked at her slowly. I didn't choose you because you were perfect. I chose you because you were honest. Or at least, I thought you were. She broke then. Quietly. Softly. Her shoulders shook. Her hands covered her mouth, and tears streamed down her face. I am honest, she whispered through the tears. I didn't know how to tell you certain things. I didn't know how to bring my past into our present without ruining what we had. I breathed slowly, trying to stay grounded. Emily, the truth doesn't ruin things. The hiding does. She looked up, her eyes swollen and desperate. I know that now. That's why I'm here, trying to fix this before it gets worse. I let that sit for a moment. Then I asked the question that had been circling in my mind from the moment she started talking. Is there anything else I need to know? Her silence was immediate, and heavy, and telling. She looked down at her hands. Yes, she whispered. There is. I felt something twist inside my chest. What is it? She hesitated again. Longer this time. So long that I felt the air shift with her fear. Then she said something I never expected. Daniel didn't just show up once. My heart dropped. How many times? I asked. She didn't look at me. 3. The number echoed in my mind like a slow drumbeat. 3 times. 3 moments I knew nothing about. 3 chances she had to tell me the truth, and didn't. I leaned back slowly, unable to hide the shock on my face. Emily, why didn't you tell me any of this? She cried harder now, her voice trembling. Because every time I thought about telling you, I imagined the look on your face. This look, the one you have right now. And I couldn't do it. I loved you too much to bring that into our marriage. I shook my head gently. But you brought it in anyway. She nodded, broken. I know. I rubbed my forehead, trying to breathe evenly. So he came to the house 3 times? While I was gone. She shook her head slowly. No, not all during your trip. I froze. Then when? Emily looked up, terrified, like she was stepping into the final truth she had been avoiding. The first time was before your trip. The second time was while you were gone. And the third time was last week. A slow coldness spread through my chest. Last week. While I was home. While we were sharing meals, holding hands, kissing goodnight. While everything felt normal. And she didn't say a word. I didn't speak. I couldn't. All the breath in my lungs felt trapped. Emily reached for me again, but stopped midway. I'm telling you now because I think he's getting worse. I think he's trying to break us apart. I think he wants me back. And I want nothing to do with him. Her voice softened to a painful whisper. I love you. I never stopped loving you. I'm just scared and ashamed and tired of hiding things that should have never been hidden. I closed my eyes for a second, breathing deeply. When I opened them again, she was watching me with a mixture of fear and hope. The kind of look someone gives when they're praying the person they love will choose empathy over anger. Emily, I said quietly, if we're going to get through this, I need the whole truth. Not pieces. Not chapters. All of it. She nodded slowly. And you'll get it, she whispered. There's one more thing I need to tell you. I stared at her carefully. What thing? Her lips trembled. Her eyes glistened. Her body went still. And then she said, the last time he came, he didn't come alone. When Emily said those words, the last time he came, he didn't come alone. It felt like the entire room went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that presses against your ears, thick and heavy, like the world itself is holding its breath. I stared at her, waiting. But the truth is, I wasn't ready. I don't think anyone could be ready for a sentence like that. Who did he come with? I asked slowly. Emily didn't answer right away. She looked toward the floor, her fingers twisting together, her chest rising and falling in quick, shallow breaths. Emily, I said gently, please. I need to know. She swallowed hard. He brought someone with him, she whispered. Someone who made everything worse. Someone who added fuel to everything he was already feeling. I felt a cold, uneasy shiver move through me. Who? She closed her eyes and finally said, his sister. I frowned. His sister. Emily nodded. She's very protective of him. Always has been. She thinks I broke him. She thinks I ruined his life. She thinks I abandoned him. There was something in her voice, a trembling mixture of shame and exhaustion, that made me realize this wasn't just about an ex. This was about an entire part of her past she never wanted me to touch. What happened when the sister came? I asked. Emily wiped her eyes again. Her movements were slow, deliberate, like every part of her was fighting through something heavy. They showed up together. I was in the kitchen. I heard the knock at the door. I thought it was a delivery. She took a shaky breath. But when I opened it, it was them. A chill moved through me. What did they want? They said they needed closure. They said they wanted to talk. They said I owed them a conversation. She shook her head, frustrated with herself. And I know I should have closed the door. I know I should have called you. I know I should have told them to leave. But I froze. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to make things worse. I exhaled slowly, trying to process everything. So what did you do? She took a long breath. I stepped outside. I didn't let them into the house. I talked to them on the porch. The porch. The same porch where we sat on summer nights. The same porch where we drank coffee and talked about our future. Now it felt polluted by a moment I was never part of. What did they say? I asked. Emily's voice broke a little. They told me that Daniel never healed from the breakup. That he still loved me. That he believed I owed him something. That I left without giving him the closure he deserved. She took another shaky breath. I told them I moved on. I told them I was married. I told them I wanted nothing from him. She looked at me, eyes full of fear. But his sister, she said something that scared me. My stomach tightened. What did she say? Emily hesitated, her voice dropping to a whisper. She said, if your husband doesn't know everything about you, he doesn't really know you. And sooner or later, he's going to learn the truth, with or without your help. A slow, painful pulse moved through my chest. Learn what truth? I asked carefully. Emily looked down. That Daniel wasn't just someone I dated, but someone I tried to help. Someone I tried to save. Someone whose life spiraled after we ended. Someone who made me feel responsible for him. She paused. And someone who didn't take rejection well. I leaned back slightly, trying to control my breathing. Emily, what exactly happened between you and him? She shook her head weakly. It started small. He was charming, kind, attentive. But as time went on, he became controlling, emotional, dependent. He said I was the only good thing in his life. He said he couldn't function without me. She swallowed hard. And when I tried to leave, he threatened to hurt himself. I felt a sickening heaviness drop into my stomach. I didn't know what to do, she whispered. So I stayed longer than I should have. I stayed because I was scared he would do something terrible if I left. I stayed because I didn't know how to walk away from someone who was hurting. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face. But eventually, I did leave. I blocked him. I changed routines. I tried to move forward. And when I met you, it finally felt like peace. It felt like freedom. Like a real life. I listened in silence. My heart felt heavy, not from anger this time, but from sadness. Sadness for her. Sadness for us. Sadness for the mess we were suddenly standing in. So when he came back, she continued, all those old fears came back with him. I didn't want you to judge me. I didn't want you to think I had been part of something unhealthy. I didn't want you to look at me differently. She wiped her nose. I didn't want you to see me as someone broken. I shook my head gently. Emily, you're not broken. She gave me a weak, pained smile. Sometimes I feel like I am. I let that hang in the air for a moment. What happened after you talked to them on the porch? I asked. Emily hesitated again. He said he needed closure. He said he wanted to apologize. He said he wanted to explain things from his side. She took a deep breath. And then he asked to see me again. I froze. See you again? I repeated, my voice tighter than before. She nodded slowly. I told him no. I told him it wasn't right. I told him I was married, and I wouldn't entertain any kind of meeting with him. My shoulders relaxed slightly. But his sister, Emily whispered. She insisted. She said I owed him that much. She said I left him with scars. She said the least I could do was hear him out. Anger, quiet, cold anger, started forming in my chest. Not at Emily, but at strangers who had injected themselves into our marriage without a single thought. And what did you say to that? I asked. Emily looked at me with tired eyes. I told her my answer was still no. Then I closed the door. I felt a small wave of relief. But it didn't last. Because Emily's voice dropped again. That wasn't the end of it. I stared at her. What do you mean? They left a letter on the porch before they walked away. My chest tightened. A letter? She nodded. I didn't read it for 2 days. I hid it. I thought if I pretended it wasn't there, maybe this whole situation would fade away. She exhaled, long and trembling. But it didn't. I looked at her carefully. What did the letter say? Emily hesitated, longer than she had hesitated about anything else that night. And then she whispered. It said they know something I have been hiding. Something they think you deserve to know. Something they said would change everything. I felt my breath catch. And Emily whispered the final sentence. And that's why I had to tell you tonight, before they do. I remember that night so clearly, even now. It sits in my memory like a slow-burning candle, steady but soft, casting long shadows on everything that came before and everything that came after. It was one of those rare evenings when the world felt quiet, almost too quiet, as if it were waiting for something to happen. And the truth is, I was waiting too. Not for a confession, not for a fight, not even for answers. I was simply waiting for my wife to look at me the way she used to. But she didn't. Not that night, and not for a long time after. She came home late. Not unusually late, but late enough for me to notice. Late enough for my chest to feel that familiar tightness I'd been trying to ignore for weeks. She walked in with that tired smile, the one that didn't reach her eyes anymore. And I remember standing there in the kitchen, pretending to rinse a plate that was already spotless, pretending I wasn't listening to the sound of her keys rattling in her hand, pretending I didn't feel that small distance between us growing inch by inch. Long day, I asked. I tried to say it lightly. Calm. Casual. The way a husband should. Not suspicious. Not worried. Not afraid. But I think she heard something in my voice. Something I didn't intend to reveal yet. She sighed, dropped her bag on the counter, and leaned against it like her whole body was exhausted from holding up a world she wouldn't show me. Her hair fell to the side, and her eyes, those eyes that once searched for me in every room, didn't quite meet mine. Yeah, she said softly. A lot on my mind. I nodded. I wanted to ask her, what's going on? Why do you feel far away? Why do I feel like I'm losing you inch by inch? But instead I stayed quiet. And I told myself it was out of respect, not fear. But it was fear. Pure, simple fear. Fear of the answer, fear of the truth, fear of the silence that might follow. People always say honesty is the hardest part of a relationship. But I think silence is harder. Silence has weight. Silence fills the spaces where love used to breathe. We ate dinner quietly that night. I asked questions about her day. She answered with short things that felt safe, surface level, like little tiny stones skipping across water instead of sinking into anything real. I laughed at one of her jokes. She smiled at one of mine. And from the outside, we might have looked like a perfectly fine couple. Two people who still shared a life, still shared a table, still shared a roof. But inside, I felt something shifting. Something I didn't want to admit. Sometimes love breaks quietly, long before it shatters. After dinner, she said she was tired. She went to bed early, leaving me alone with the dishes. I remember staring at the sink, feeling this ache in my chest, like I was missing something I couldn't name. And that's when it hit me. Hiding things is not always a loud act. Sometimes hiding is gentle, soft. Sometimes hiding looks like someone slowly turning away, a little bit at a time, until the person you love stands at the edge of your life, far enough that you can no longer see their heart. I went to bed later, quietly, not wanting to disturb her. She was already asleep, or pretending to be. I couldn't tell. Her breathing was steady, almost too steady. I reached out to touch her shoulder, but my hand froze halfway, because I didn't know if my touch would comfort her or burden her. And that was a strange feeling, not knowing if my presence brought her peace or pressure. I laid down beside her, staring at the ceiling, the darkness pressing in on me like a heavy blanket. I listened to her breath. I counted each rise and fall, as if measuring the distance between us. And somewhere in that quiet, my mind whispered a question I didn't want to answer. What has she been carrying that she doesn't want me to see? It's strange how a single question can crack open your whole world. The next day, things didn't feel better. They felt heavier. She moved around the house in a distracted haze, like she was floating through her own world, one I didn't have a key to. She smiled at me when I handed her coffee, but the smile was short-lived, almost polite. And I suddenly realized how painful polite love feels compared to real love. Polite love is like a handshake where a hug used to be. It cuts in ways you don't expect. I wanted to ask her again if everything was okay. But you know how love makes you careful? How fear makes you quiet. I didn't push. I didn't question. I didn't want to be the reason she felt even more overwhelmed. But that decision, to stay quiet, haunts me even now. Because sometimes the things we don't say do more damage than the things we do. Later that evening, I noticed her sitting on the porch alone, staring into the distance. The sunset washed her in warm light, but she looked cold somehow, like her thoughts were miles away. I stepped outside and sat next to her. She didn't look at me at first. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could feel the weight of unspoken truths sitting between us like an invisible guest we both pretended wasn't there. Finally, I broke the silence. You seem distant lately, I said gently. I just want to know if you're okay. She closed her eyes for a moment, and I saw her swallow hard. Her hands tightened around the edge of her sweater. She shook her head slightly. I'm trying, she whispered. I'm really trying. Those words hit me harder than anything else she could have said. Trying to stay, trying to breathe, trying to hold things together, trying not to fall apart, trying and failing. I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't hold on either. And that small, soft non-reaction hurt more than any argument we had ever had. I asked her again, this time quietly, almost afraid of my own voice. Baby, what are you trying to get through? She looked out at the sky, as if the clouds had the answers she couldn't give me. Her breathing shook. And then she said something that stayed with me for a long time. There are things I wish I could tell you, but I don't know how. My heart dropped, but I stayed calm. I stayed quiet. I didn't want to push her. I didn't want to scare her. But inside me something broke a little. Because when the person you love says they don't know how to tell you something, it means they've been holding it for a long time. It means the truth isn't new. Only your awareness of it is. I didn't ask what those things were. I should have. God, I should have. But I told myself I was giving her space. I told myself she would come to me when she was ready. I told myself love meant patience. But the truth? Sometimes waiting becomes its own kind of mistake. She leaned her head on her knees, and I sat there beside her, feeling useless. I thought holding her would help, but something told me not to. Something told me she felt fragile, like a glass edge. One wrong touch, and everything would shatter. We sat in silence until the sun disappeared. And still, she didn't say anything more. That night, she went to bed without finishing her tea. She didn't kiss me goodnight. She didn't smile the way she used to. And I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was losing her piece by piece. People don't break all at once. They break slowly, quietly, secretly. I was beginning to understand that. The next few days followed the same pattern. Small smiles, half conversations, gentle deflections, and a quiet sadness that followed her like a shadow she couldn't step out of. And then, one evening, I found something. Not dramatic, not explosive, not scandalous, just a small thing. A small thing that unlocked a door to a truth I wasn't prepared to walk through. A truth she had been holding. A truth that wasn't meant to hurt me, but eventually did. But that part comes next. That part comes when the heart starts to recognize what the eyes have been unwilling to see. Because every relationship has a moment when the truth stops knocking and kicks the door open. And for us, that moment was slowly approaching. The days after Emily's confessions felt heavier than anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't loud chaos or screaming matches that made it unbearable. It was quiet. That quiet that sits in your chest, pressing down, making every breath slow, deliberate, and full of hesitation. I kept going through the motions, waking up, making coffee, leaving for work, coming home. But inside, everything was different. The world I had thought so steady, so simple, had cracked. And through that crack, 1,000 questions poured in like rain I couldn't shelter myself from. I remember the first morning after she had told me everything. I woke up before her. The sun was just starting to rise, but it cast an awkward orange glow across the bedroom. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind running through every detail she had shared. Every word, every pause, every tear. I tried to make sense of it all, tried to tell myself that this was a phase, that maybe things weren't as serious as they sounded. But the truth is, the human mind is sneaky, and mine refused to let me ignore it. I thought about Daniel. I thought about his sister. I thought about every single time she said she had hidden things from me to protect me. And I realized something. Protection can sometimes be the cruelest form of betrayal. Because when you protect someone from the truth, you give them a false sense of reality. You let them love what isn't real, and the weight of discovering it later is heavier than anything else. I got up slowly and went to the kitchen. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I put on the kettle for tea, hoping the warmth would help steady my nerves. But even the simple act of boiling water felt complicated. It felt like I was performing a ritual to keep myself sane, while inside, I was collapsing piece by piece. When Emily came down, she looked at me and offered a small smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. I returned it, or at least tried to. I wanted her to feel normal, to think I was okay. But the truth was, I wasn't. And she knew it. She always knows. "Good morning," she said softly. "Morning," I replied, pouring the hot water into the teapot. We sat at the table together, sipping our tea in silence. It wasn't the comforting silence of a couple enjoying a quiet morning. It was heavy, loaded with unspoken words, questions that hung like invisible weights between us. I wanted to ask her about the letter, about Daniel's messages, about the porch encounter, about everything. But I didn't. I waited. And as the minutes passed, the tension became almost unbearable. Finally, I broke the silence. "Emily, why didn't you tell me any of this sooner?" She swallowed and looked down at her hands. "I thought I could handle it on my own," she whispered. "I thought I could contain it all, protect us both from the chaos." I shook my head slowly, a mix of sadness and frustration rising in me. "Emily, love isn't about containment. Love isn't about pretending things don't exist. Love is about facing them together, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. And you've been carrying this alone for so long. It's breaking both of us now." She nodded, her lips trembling. "I know," she said softly. "I know it's wrong. I know I should have trusted you with the truth. But I was scared that if you knew all of me, all my past, you wouldn't love me the way you do now." Her words hit me like a quiet knife. Not sharp, not screaming, just slowly cutting through the very fabric of my trust. "I do love you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But love isn't about fear. It's about honesty. And right now, we need honesty more than anything else." She nodded again, biting her lower lip. The kind of lip biting that signals a person is holding back a storm of emotion, trying desperately to keep it contained. I reached across the table and took her hand. She didn't pull away, but her grip was light, hesitant, fragile. We spent the morning like that, quietly, side by side, our hands touching in small, almost meaningless ways, but enough to remind each other that we were still here, that we were still trying. Later that day, I decided I needed answers. Not the small, half-truths she had given me over time. Not the vague recollections or gentle reassurances. I needed the whole story, every painful detail, every scar, every encounter that had been hidden from me. Because without it, I couldn't move forward. And I couldn't forgive, not fully, not without understanding. I remember sitting down with her in the living room that evening. The house felt heavier than usual, as though the walls themselves were aware of the tension. I looked at her, and she looked at me. No words were spoken for a few minutes. Just the sound of the clock ticking, the hum of the lights, the distant sound of cars passing outside. "Emily, I need you to tell me everything," I said finally. "All of it. No holding back. No excuses. No fear. Just the truth." She took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling with effort. Her eyes welled up, but she nodded. "I will," she said softly. And then she began. She told me about Daniel, about how their relationship had started, how it had ended, and how she had tried to help him even after it was over. She spoke of the times he had shown up unexpectedly, of the letters and messages he had sent, of his sister's interference. She told me everything, the moments I hadn't known about, the choices she had made to protect us, and the times she had faltered. I listened in silence. I didn't interrupt. I didn't ask questions. I didn't speak. I just listened. Because for the first time, I realized something fundamental about love. Listening can be the hardest part. Sitting with someone's truth, fully absorbing it, letting it touch you without judgment. That is where understanding begins. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. I couldn't tell. Time seemed suspended in that room as her story unfolded. And when she finished, I felt something shift inside me. Not fully healed, not fully reconciled, but shifted. Because now at least I knew. Now, at least I could face it. We sat there together for a long while after that. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. The weight of truth had been placed on the table between us. and it was enough to feel the tension ease just slightly. That night, when we went to bed, we held each other differently. Not as two people pretending everything was okay. Not as two people hiding from the past, but as two people aware of the fragility of love and the strength required to keep it alive. I learned something crucial that night. Honesty is the bridge between love and trust. Without it, we are wandering in a fog, believing we are together, while really, we are just beside each other, alone. And even though my heart still ached from what I had discovered, even though fear and doubt lingered like shadows in the corners, I felt a small spark of hope. A fragile, quiet hope that we could rebuild, that we could face our fears together, that love could survive even the secrets that almost destroyed it. Because that is the lesson I needed to learn. Life is messy. People are messy. Relationships are messy. But the willingness to face truth, to sit in discomfort, to endure emotional pain for the sake of love, this is what separates those who survive from those who falter. The next morning, the house felt quieter. Not empty, not lonely, but reflective. It was as if every corner, every wall, every shadow had absorbed the weight of yesterday's confessions. I woke before Emily, as I often did, and watched her sleeping peacefully. Her face was calm, unaware of the thoughts swirling in my mind. And I realized then how fragile life feels, how delicate trust can be, and how easily it can bend under the weight of unspoken truths. I didn't wake her. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, letting the steam rise from the mug as I thought. The aroma was comforting, but it couldn't soothe the knot in my chest. I thought about everything she had told me, every detail, every encounter, every hidden fear. And I realized how much of life we live carrying pieces of the past that have no place in our present. But we carry them anyway, because fear tells us to, because love sometimes feels like survival. When Emily finally came down, she looked more relaxed than the previous day, though I could see the lingering traces of exhaustion under her eyes. I offered her a smile, and she returned it with a small, genuine warmth. For the first time in days, it felt like we were just two people again. Two people trying to move forward together. "I'm sorry," she said softly, sitting down across from me. "For everything. For hiding things. For being scared. For making you feel. I don't even know the right word." I shook my head gently. "Emily, don't apologize for fear. Don't apologize for being human. You're not perfect, and I'm not perfect, and that's okay. What matters is that we face it now. That's what counts." She nodded, a small tear slipping down her cheek. I reached out and took her hand again. This time, she held on. Not tightly, not in fear, but with quiet trust. And I realized how powerful that simple connection was. How healing it could be to just exist with someone in honesty, without pretending, without hiding. We spent the morning talking, not about Daniel, not about the past, but about us. About our life. About our routines, our dreams, our frustrations, our hopes. We laughed softly at little things, like how she always burned the toast, or how I always forget to refill the sugar. We talked about vacations we wanted to take, the movies we wanted to see, and the small, ordinary joys we had almost forgotten in the chaos of fear and secrecy. It was ordinary, yes, but ordinary felt like a miracle. After the intensity of everything we'd been through, the simple act of sitting across from each other, sharing thoughts and laughter, felt like rebuilding a fragile bridge with bare hands. And slowly, brick by brick, I could feel that bridge strengthening. Later that afternoon, I went for a walk alone. I needed space to think, to breathe, to sort through the storm inside me. The world outside was calm, sunlight filtering through the trees, children playing in the distance, birds calling to each other. And I realized something. Life keeps going, whether we're ready for it or not. And maybe that's what makes it beautiful and terrifying at the same time. I thought about Emily again. About Daniel. About the sister. About the fear, the secrecy, the lies. I thought about trust, about forgiveness, about love that survives its own storms. And I realized that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It isn't about pretending the pain didn't exist. Forgiveness is about choosing to move forward, about deciding that the person you love is worth the effort, the patience, the quiet rebuilding. When I returned home, Emily was in the garden, tending to the small patch of flowers she loved. The sight was ordinary again, but in that ordinariness, there was hope. I walked to her slowly, and she looked up, startled at first, then smiled softly. "I went for a walk," I said. She nodded, understanding more than I could put into words. "Did you think?" she asked. I paused, choosing my words carefully. "Yes, I thought about us, about life, about mistakes, about fear, and I realized that if we want to move forward, we have to do it together. Fully, completely, without hiding anything anymore." She nodded again, tears brimming in her eyes. "I want that too," she whispered. We sat together in the garden for hours, talking, holding hands, simply being present with one another. There were moments of silence, but they were comfortable now, not heavy. There was understanding, not suspicion. And slowly, the weight that had pressed down on us began to lift, replaced by something fragile but real: connection. That night, as we prepared for bed, Emily turned to me and said something I will never forget. "I was so scared," she whispered, "that my past would ruin us. But now I see maybe it can't. Maybe love can survive it, if we let it." I held her close, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat against mine. And in that quiet, I realized the truth. Life isn't perfect. Relationships aren't perfect. People aren't perfect. But love, real love, can endure the mess, the pain, the fear, the mistakes. It can endure if we're willing to face it together. We fell asleep holding each other that night, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. Not complete peace. Life would never be completely free of challenges, but a peace born from honesty, from trust, from the courage to face reality together. Over the following days, we continued to rebuild slowly. Every conversation, every shared moment, every touch became intentional. We spoke openly about fears, about boundaries, about the past, and about the life we wanted to create. And with each passing day, the fear that had haunted us began to fade, replaced by a quiet resilience. I learned something profound through all of it. People are complex. Love is complicated. Trust can be fragile. But the willingness to be honest, to communicate, and to remain committed even when it's hard, that is what makes love endure. And in the end, it is worth every tear, every fear, every late-night conversation, every uncomfortable truth. By the time the week ended, we had created something new, something stronger than what we had before. Not perfect, not free of pain, but real, honest, connected. And in that honesty, we found the courage to hope again. Because life teaches us that the greatest lessons often come through hardship. That forgiveness is a choice, trust is an action, and love is a commitment that requires patience, empathy, and the willingness to face the truth, no matter how difficult. And as I held Emily that night, I realized that despite everything we had endured, despite the fears, the secrets, and the moments of doubt, love had not broken us. It had only taught us how strong we could be together. And that is the lesson I will carry with me forever. The past may shape us, fears may challenge us, and mistakes may scar us. But love, when nurtured with honesty and compassion, can survive even the most painful storms. The days that followed felt different. Not because everything was fixed, far from it, but because the air between us had changed. It was lighter, not heavy. Honest, not secretive. Even though the past still lingered like a shadow, it no longer felt like a weight pressing down relentlessly. Instead, it became something we acknowledged, something we faced together. I noticed small things first. How Emily would glance at me when she thought I wasn't looking, a subtle reassurance in her eyes. How she laughed a little more freely, though still cautiously. How we could sit in the same room, talking about mundane things, and still feel a deep connection growing between us. Those small gestures mattered more than words because they were honest, and honesty had been missing for far too long. Yet, even with these small signs of progress, I couldn't ignore the lingering tension. Daniel and his sister were still out there, a presence we couldn't fully erase. Their letters, messages, and unexpected appearances had left scars that weren't visible but felt heavy in our hearts. I had to accept that some wounds couldn't simply disappear. They could only be tended, slowly and carefully, with patience and understanding. One evening, Emily suggested we take a walk in the park nearby. The sun was low in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the grass. We held hands as we walked, not speaking at first, letting the quiet of the evening wrap around us like a protective cocoon. There was a comfort in the silence, not the tense silence of unspoken truths, but the peaceful silence of two people learning to breathe together again. Finally, Emily spoke. "I've been thinking," she said softly, "about everything. About Daniel, his sister, us, and how much we've been through." I nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "I'm scared," she continued, "that if I let go of the fear completely, I'll make a mistake again. That the past might come back to hurt us." Her words were honest, and I appreciated that. Honesty was all we had been working on. "I understand," I said, "but fear only controls us if we let it. We can't live in it forever. We have to make our choices based on what's real now, not what happened years ago." She looked at me, eyes glistening in the fading sunlight. "You make it sound so simple," she whispered. I smiled faintly. "It's never simple, but it's worth it." We continued walking, letting the quiet between us stretch comfortably. And then I noticed a couple sitting on a bench ahead, laughing and talking as if nothing in the world could touch them. It was ordinary, almost banal, but it reminded me how fleeting normalcy can be, how precious it is when you fight to preserve it. I looked at Emily and realized that, despite everything, we were building that same normalcy, piece by piece, moment by moment. Later that night, back at home, I found myself reflecting on the concept of trust. Trust had been fractured between us, yes, but we were slowly mending it, not through grand gestures, but through small acts, honest words, shared experiences, patient listening. I realized that trust wasn't something given freely. It had to be nurtured, protected, and reinforced every single day. The next challenge came sooner than I expected. Daniel's presence returned, not physically, but through another letter. Emily handed it to me quietly, her hands trembling. I recognized the envelope immediately. My chest tightened as I broke the seal. The words inside were measured, manipulative, and filled with subtle accusations. It was clear he was trying to provoke a reaction, to destabilize the fragile peace we had been building. I read the letter aloud to Emily, calmly, without letting anger seep into my voice. As I finished, I placed it on the table. "This doesn't define us," I said. "We decide how much power to give this, how much influence it has over our lives." She nodded, a small smile breaking through her anxiety. "You're right," she whispered. "I don't want him to control us anymore." That night, we talked long into the evening. We spoke about boundaries, about how to handle unexpected interference from Daniel or anyone else connected to our past. We made plans, not out of fear, but out of determination to protect the love we had rebuilt. And I realized something profound. Love isn't just passion or connection. It's also courage, patience, and the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths together. In the following days, we started small routines to strengthen our bond. We cooked together, shared quiet breakfasts, went on walks, and intentionally made time to communicate, not just about logistics, but about feelings, fears, and hopes. And each day, as we spoke honestly and listened without judgment, the invisible scars of the past began to fade, replaced by something more enduring, understanding. One evening, while sitting in the living room, Emily turned to me with a vulnerable expression. "There's still something I need to tell you," she said softly. I nodded, bracing myself. She took a deep breath. "It's about my fear of failing you, not because of Daniel or the past, but because of myself. I've carried guilt, thinking I might somehow undo what we've built." I reached for her hand, holding it firmly. "Emily, no one is perfect. No one's past defines them. What matters is what we do now. How we choose to love each other, every day." Tears welled in her eyes, but she smiled faintly. "I'm trying," she whispered. "And I'm here," I replied. "We'll try together. Always." That night, I felt a quiet sense of gratitude. Not for a single dramatic revelation or an explosive confrontation, but for the slow, deliberate work of rebuilding trust and love. It was exhausting, yes, and sometimes painful, but it was also real, honest, true. And in that honesty, we found the courage to face whatever challenges came next. Weeks passed, and life returned to a steady rhythm. The letter from Daniel was eventually ignored. His sister's attempts to intervene faded. And while the memories of the past lingered, they no longer dictated our present. We had learned that love requires boundaries, that honesty is more valuable than comfort, and that trust, once fractured, can be repaired through patience, empathy, and shared commitment. One evening, as we watched the sunset together, Emily leaned her head on my shoulder. "I think we're finally okay," she said softly. I smiled, feeling the warmth of her presence. "We are," I replied. "Not perfect, but okay. And that's enough." In that quiet moment, I realized a fundamental truth. Life will always present challenges. Past mistakes, fears, and hidden truths will always have a way of surfacing. But the way we respond, together, honestly, patiently, determines whether love survives or fades. And as I held Emily that evening, I knew that love, when nurtured with truth, patience, and empathy, can endure anything. Because the most important lesson I've learned is this: it's not the absence of fear, pain, or secrets that makes love strong. It's the courage to face them together every single day, without pretending, without hiding, and without giving up. And in that courage, we found our peace. It was one of those mornings where the world feels deceptively calm. The sunlight poured through the windows, spilling gold across the kitchen floor, birds chirping softly outside, the smell of fresh coffee filling the air. Everything looked ordinary. Everything seemed normal. But I knew better. I had learned that calm often precedes a storm. Emily was humming softly as she moved around the kitchen, preparing breakfast. The rhythm of her movements was comforting, almost hypnotic. I watched her, silently grateful for these ordinary moments, for the small things that reminded me of who we were and who we could be. But deep down, a knot of unease twisted in my stomach. I didn't know what the day would bring, but I knew it would bring something. Something we couldn't ignore. When she finally turned to me, carrying 2 plates of eggs and toast, her smile faltered slightly. There was a hesitation in her eyes I hadn't seen before. "What's wrong?" I asked, placing my cup down. She shook her head slowly, almost as if she were bracing herself. "I don't know," she whispered. "It's nothing, or maybe it's everything. I can't tell yet." I reached across the table and took her hand. The warmth of her fingers calmed me, but I could feel the tension beneath the surface. "Whatever it is," I said gently, "we face it together." She nodded, squeezing my hand. But even as we sat there, eating in quiet anticipation, I could sense that the past we had carefully contained was about to knock at the door again. Later that morning, the doorbell rang. I didn't recognize the number on the caller ID. Emily hesitated, her hand hovering over the handle. "Maybe it's just someone delivering something," she said softly, but her voice lacked conviction. I went to the door and opened it. And there he was, Daniel, standing there, calm, composed, a small, unreadable smile on his face. Beside him was his sister. Neither had looked like the man or woman I had imagined. They were ordinary in appearance, almost benign, yet the aura they carried was anything but ordinary. It was quiet power, the kind that can destabilize without shouting. "Hi," Daniel said, his tone casual. "I think we need to talk." I stepped back, gesturing for them to come in, though part of me wanted to slam the door and pretend none of this existed. Emily came to stand beside me, her hand finding mine instinctively. "We don't want trouble," I said firmly. "We're happy here. Please leave if that's your intent." Daniel's eyes met mine with something that felt like a challenge, not anger, but persistence. "I'm not here to fight," he said softly. "I just want to clear the air, to set things right. One last time." Emily's grip on my hand tightened. I could feel her fear, and I understood it. But I also understood that this moment couldn't be avoided. "Fine," I said, stepping aside. "Talk. But this stays civil. No games." They entered the living room. I gestured for Emily to sit, and she did, her eyes never leaving me. Daniel sat across from us, his sister beside him. The tension in the room was palpable, a thin sheet stretched tight, ready to snap. Daniel spoke first. "I know this has been hard," he said quietly, "for all of us. And I know my presence has caused problems. But I want you to understand my actions were never meant to hurt you, Emily. I was lost. I was angry. I didn't know how to cope with the way things ended between us." Emily's lips trembled. I could see the conflict in her eyes, the residual guilt, the fear of reopening old wounds, the desire to protect the life we were building together. Daniel continued, "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that the past is not as black and white as it seems. There are things you don't know about my side, about why I acted the way I did." I listened carefully. My instinct was to shut him down, to defend Emily, to protect our hard-won peace. But I realized that silence might be the strongest answer. Let him speak, I thought. Let the truth surface, even if it's uncomfortable. Emily took a deep breath. Daniel, she said softly, I don't know if this helps anything. The past has already hurt us. What do you expect from us now? I just want clarity, he said, his eyes earnest now. I want to be honest, finally. And I want to leave without resentment. For everyone's sake. We spent hours talking. And I don't mean just talking about old events. I mean unraveling layers of misunderstandings, facing the consequences of decisions made long ago, acknowledging pain, guilt, and misplaced intentions. Every revelation brought a twinge of discomfort, but it also brought a release. A chance to finally see the full picture, to understand motivations that had been hidden behind anger and fear. By the time Daniel and his sister left, the room felt lighter. Not perfect, not resolved entirely, but lighter. A chapter had closed, a confrontation had happened, and Emily and I were left with a newfound sense of strength. That night, as we sat together, exhausted from the emotional marathon, Emily rested her head on my shoulder. We survived that, she whispered. Yes, I said softly. And we'll survive anything else too. Because we face it together. I realized then that life would always bring challenges, people from the past, fears we hadn't fully confronted, moments that threatened our peace. But it wasn't the challenges that defined us. It was how we faced them, with honesty, with patience, with love. And in that quiet, reflective night, I understood something essential. Love is not the absence of conflict. It is the choice to stay, to listen, to forgive, and to continue building something meaningful, even when it feels fragile. Because life is unpredictable, and people are imperfect. But love, real, enduring love, thrives not on perfection, but on courage, empathy, and unwavering commitment. And as Emily drifted to sleep in my arms, I felt a deep, heartfelt gratitude. Grateful for the past, with all its pain. Grateful for the present, with all its challenges. Grateful for the future, knowing we could face it, together. The morning after Daniel and his sister left, the house felt unusually still. There was no laughter, no clinking of cups, no casual chatter, just a quiet that seemed to press against my chest. Emily was already awake when I got out of bed, sitting on the edge of the sofa, her hands folded in her lap. She looked fragile, almost as if the confrontation from the day before had drained more than her energy. It had touched the very core of her being. I poured myself a cup of coffee, letting the steam rise slowly into the air. The simple act felt grounding, almost meditative, as if holding the warm mug could somehow tether me to reality. I watched Emily, noticing the small lines of tension around her eyes, the way her shoulders slumped slightly forward. She didn't speak. Neither did I. There was no rush. We had learned, over the past weeks, that silence could sometimes hold as much meaning as words. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I can't stop thinking about everything, what he said, the letters, the truth he tried to lay out. I nodded, placing my mug on the table. I know. It's hard. I feel it too, I said, choosing my words carefully. But we can't let it take control of us. We can acknowledge it, but we don't have to live in it. She looked at me, her eyes searching, seeking reassurance. I wanted to give it freely, but I also wanted her to see that part of healing required courage, the courage to face discomfort without fear. I keep wondering if we did the right thing, she admitted. If letting them speak, letting him explain, if it opened something that should have stayed closed. I took her hand gently, feeling the tremor in her fingers. Sometimes, the right thing is uncomfortable. Sometimes, the right thing is letting the truth come out, no matter how messy it is. Because only then can we decide how to move forward. She nodded slowly, a tear slipping down her cheek. I brushed it away gently, careful not to hurt her, careful not to overwhelm her. We sat in silence for a long while after that, simply holding each other and letting the quiet settle around us. The tension hadn't completely left, but it had loosened. It was a fragile piece, one that needed care and attention, but it was a start. The rest of the day passed slowly. We avoided the television, our phones, even the usual routines. Instead, we focused on small acts, preparing lunch together, watering the garden, walking through the neighborhood. Each step felt deliberate, each movement intentional. We were learning to rebuild, not just the house or the routines, but the foundation of our trust and connection. That evening, I suggested we sit on the porch, where the air was cooler and the sky stretched in soft gradients of orange and pink. Emily leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, and we watched as the sun sank lower, painting the world in quiet beauty. "I still feel raw," she said, her voice low. "Even after talking, after letting them speak, it's still inside me. Like I'm carrying something I can't put down." I nodded, understanding completely. I had the same feeling. "It's okay to feel that way," I said. "It means we're human. It means we care. And feeling it doesn't make us weak. It makes us aware. Aware enough to choose how we respond, how we rebuild, how we heal." She stayed silent after that, letting my words sink in. And I realized then how important it was, not just to listen, but to let the other person find their own meaning, their own pace of understanding. Healing couldn't be forced. It couldn't be rushed. It had to grow organically, slowly, like a plant reaching for sunlight. Over the next few days, we continued this careful rebuilding. We didn't rush conversations, but we didn't avoid them either. We spoke in small increments about our fears, our frustrations, our desires. And with every conversation, the tension loosened, replaced by a growing sense of partnership. We were learning, together, how to communicate without judgment, how to listen without interruption, how to exist with the weight of our shared experiences without letting it crush us. One afternoon, I found Emily in the study, going through old letters and photographs. She looked up at me, a mixture of apprehension and determination in her eyes. "I need to do this," she said softly. "I need to face the past fully, not just the parts that involve Daniel or his sister, but everything that's shaped me. Only then can I move forward completely." I nodded. "I'll be right here," I said, "every step of the way." And I meant it. I realized that love wasn't just about sharing good moments or comforting each other in times of ease. It was about standing together in the most challenging moments, holding each other steady while the storms of the past and present collided around us. Emily worked quietly, sorting through the letters, photographs, and mementos of her past. Some brought laughter, others tears. I stayed nearby, a silent presence, ready to offer comfort or reassurance when needed, but never rushing her, never pushing her to confront more than she was ready to face. That night, after she had finished, we sat together on the couch, the room dimly lit by a single lamp. She turned to me, her eyes tired but resolute. "I feel lighter," she said softly. "Not completely free, but lighter. Like I've taken the first real step toward letting go of what I've carried for so long." I smiled gently. "That's all any of us can do," I said. "One step at a time. One choice at a time. Healing isn't a destination, it's a journey." And I felt it too. A subtle shift inside me, a loosening of the weight that had pressed on my chest for weeks. It was fragile, yes, but it was there. The first glimmer of real peace in a long while. The following days blended into weeks. We continued to nurture this fragile peace, carefully tending to it like a garden. We spoke more openly, laughed more freely, and began to trust the quiet moments just as much as the conversations. Then one evening, Emily suggested something unexpected. "Let's take a trip," she said, a tentative smile on her face. "Somewhere we've never been. Just us. To remind ourselves why we fell in love in the first place." I looked at her, surprised, but also deeply moved. "That's a wonderful idea," I said. "We need that. A chance to reconnect, away from everything, to just be together." And in that moment, I realized how far we had come. We had faced fear, confrontation, and the lingering shadows of the past. And yet, here we were, still choosing each other, still choosing love. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was real. And sometimes, that was enough. That night, as we prepared for bed, I lay beside Emily, reflecting on everything we had endured. I realized that the true measure of love wasn't the absence of challenges or pain. It was the courage to face them, together, with patience, empathy, and honesty. And I knew, with quiet certainty, that no matter what storms lay ahead, we could survive them. Because we had learned the hardest lesson of all: love is strongest when it is tested, when it is challenged, and when it is chosen every single day, in the face of fear and uncertainty. We fell asleep holding each other, feeling fragile but hopeful, exhausted but alive. And I knew, for the first time in a long while, that we were on the path to something lasting, Something real, something worth every tear, every fear, every late-night conversation, every moment of doubt. Because love, in its truest form, endures. The days after we decided to take that trip were quiet, almost serene. Packing felt mundane but therapeutic, a small act of preparation that reminded us we were still building a life together, one small choice at a time. Emily moved through the house with a quiet determination, checking and rechecking things, while I watched her, feeling both admiration and deep gratitude. She had been through so much, yet she still carried herself with grace and care. When the morning of our departure arrived, the air felt crisp, as if the world itself knew we were stepping into something new. I helped Emily with her bag, noticing how her eyes sparkled, a subtle hint of excitement replacing the lingering fear from past days. We drove in silence for a while, letting the hum of the tires on the road, the wind brushing against the windows, and the soft music in the background guide us into calm reflection. During that drive, I realized how important these moments of ordinary connection were. Not the dramatic confrontations or tearful confessions, but the simple acts, holding hands, sharing a glance, laughing softly at something trivial. These were the bricks of rebuilding, small yet crucial, forming a foundation sturdy enough to support trust and love. When we arrived at our destination, a small lakeside town tucked away from the noise of life, the air smelled different, fresh, and alive. We checked into a modest inn and decided to take a walk along the shore. The lake stretched endlessly before us, reflecting the sky in shades of pink and gold, and the gentle lapping of water against the shore created a rhythm that seemed to slow time itself. Emily leaned against me as we walked, her head resting lightly on my shoulder. "I feel lighter here," she said softly. "It's like the lake is absorbing all the tension, all the fear." I nodded, breathing in the cool air. It's a fresh start in a way, a chance to leave the shadows behind, at least for a little while, and just be with each other. We didn't speak much after that, letting the natural quiet guide us. But there was an unspoken conversation happening in glances, touches, and small gestures. We had learned that sometimes silence carried more weight than words. It carried understanding, trust, and a sense of connection that no amount of conversation could match. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, we sat on a small wooden dock, our feet dangling above the water. The sky deepened into shades of purple and navy, stars beginning to appear like tiny candles in the dark. I took Emily's hand in mine, feeling the warmth, the pulse, the steady rhythm of life between us. "I want to thank you," she said softly, her eyes glistening in the twilight. "For staying, for trusting me, for believing in us, even when things were messy." I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I should be thanking you," I said, "for being brave enough to face the truth, for being honest, for choosing us every single day, even when it was hard." We sat like that for a long while, letting the quiet of the lake and the night surround us. I realized then how far we had come, not just from the confrontation with Daniel, but from every hidden fear, every secret, every moment of doubt that had threatened to pull us apart. Each step we had taken together, no matter how small, had brought us here. Over the next few days, we explored the town, hiked small trails, and shared meals at little cafes tucked away on side streets. Each experience, each shared laugh, each quiet moment of connection felt like a reinforcement of the bond we were rebuilding. There were moments of reflection, too, talks about our past, our mistakes, our hopes, but these were gentle, not pressured, allowing healing to occur naturally. One afternoon, while sitting on a bench overlooking the lake, Emily turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking about forgiveness," she said. "Not just forgiving each other, but forgiving ourselves. For the mistakes we made, for the times we doubted, for the fears that controlled us." I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "Forgiveness is essential," I said. "It doesn't erase the past, but it allows us to live in the present fully, without being weighed down by regrets." She smiled faintly. "I think I'm ready for that. To forgive myself, and to fully accept the life we're building." I squeezed her hand. "And I'll forgive too. I'll forgive the past, and I'll keep choosing us, every day." That night, back in our inn room, we reflected on the journey we had taken together. The confessions, the confrontations, the fears, the letters, the secrets. All of it had shaped us. But it hadn't destroyed us. Instead, it had taught us patience, understanding, empathy, and the power of honesty. As we lay in bed, Emily resting her head against my chest, I realized that love isn't about perfection. It isn't about avoiding mistakes or pain. Love is about the courage to face challenges together, the willingness to communicate openly, and the patience to rebuild trust, even after it has been fractured. Over the following days, we returned home with a renewed sense of purpose. The routines of daily life felt different now, infused with intention and mindfulness. We spoke more openly, laughed more freely, and held each other with a deeper understanding than before. Even mundane moments, washing dishes, folding laundry, walking to the mailbox, felt meaningful, a quiet celebration of our perseverance and growth. Emily suggested we create small rituals to reinforce our bond. Morning coffee together, evening walks, weekly reflections on the week's challenges and joys. These small acts became anchors, steadying us through the unpredictable waves of life. One evening, while sharing tea on the porch, Emily looked at me thoughtfully. "I never realized how much small, ordinary moments could mean," she said softly. "Before, I thought love was grand gestures, dramatic declarations, perfect days. But now I see love is in the quiet, consistent choices we make for each other." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of resonance. Exactly. It's in choosing to stay, to listen, to forgive, to trust, even when it's hard. That's what makes it real and lasting. Weeks turned into months, and with each passing day, we continued to strengthen the foundation we had rebuilt. The past became less of a shadow and more of a lesson. We had confronted it, understood it, and integrated it into our present without letting it define us. One night, as we sat under the stars in our backyard, Emily leaned her head on my shoulder. "I feel truly safe now," she whispered. "Not just with you, but with myself. I've learned that I can face the past, accept it, and still choose love." I held her close, feeling the quiet warmth of her presence. And I feel the same. We've both grown, endured, and learned. And we continue to choose each other every single day. In that moment, I realized a profound truth. Life will always bring challenges, past mistakes, and moments of fear. But the strength of love lies in our ability to confront them together with honesty, patience, and unwavering commitment. And as we sat beneath the stars, the world around us calm and serene, I knew that no matter what trials lay ahead, we had built something enduring, something resilient, something real. Because true love isn't about avoiding pain. It's about facing it together, embracing the lessons it brings, and choosing to grow stronger as a result. And in that quiet, reflective night, I understood that we had done exactly that. The weeks after our lakeside trip passed in a comforting rhythm. The small rituals we had created, morning coffee, evening walks, shared reflections, became the anchors of our days. Life felt steadier, quieter, and yet richer. We had learned to savor small moments, to find joy in ordinary routines, and to communicate without fear or pretense. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a deep sense of contentment. But I also knew that life had a way of testing the progress we had made. Calm is often fleeting, and growth, no matter how deliberate, is fragile. It happened on a Wednesday morning. Emily had gone out to run errands, and I was left alone in the house, sipping coffee and scrolling through emails, when my phone buzzed with a message I didn't recognize. The words on the screen made my chest tighten immediately. "We need to talk. Now. Urgent." No signature, no indication of who it was. Just those 4 words. My mind raced. Was it Daniel? His sister? Or something else entirely? I couldn't tell, and the uncertainty gnawed at me. When Emily returned an hour later, I tried to mask the unease in my voice. "Everything okay?" she asked, setting down her shopping bags. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just a strange message." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "What kind of message?" I hesitated, then showed her the text. She read it slowly, her lips parting slightly, a subtle tension creeping into her posture. "It's vague," she said quietly, "but it doesn't feel good." We spent the next hour discussing possibilities, trying to prepare for whatever might be coming, but without letting fear dominate the morning. I realized then how much we had grown. Before, this uncertainty would have driven us apart, led to arguments or panic. Now, we approached it calmly, together, as a team. By late afternoon, a car pulled up outside. I didn't recognize it. Emily and I exchanged a glance, silently agreeing to face whatever it was head-on. I opened the door, and to my surprise, it was not Daniel or his sister, or anyone from the past we feared, but an old friend I hadn't seen in years, someone whose presence stirred memories of simpler times. "Hey," he said, smiling but with a seriousness that immediately drew our attention. "I know it's been a long time, but I need your help, and I need to be honest with you about something that happened years ago." Emily and I invited him inside, sensing that this was another pivotal moment, a challenge we couldn't ignore. The conversation that followed was long, filled with revelations about past decisions, mistakes, and misunderstandings that had lingered in the background for years. Some of it was shocking, some of it was painful, and some of it forced us to confront truths about ourselves we had never considered. Through it all, Emily and I stayed together, supporting each other, listening carefully, and responding not with anger, but with measured honesty. I realized that love and trust were being tested again, not by secrets or deception, but by the weight of external events, the ripple effects of past choices, and the courage required to face them without judgment. That evening, after our friend left, Emily and I sat together in the living room, the dim light of the lamp casting soft shadows around us. "We've been through so much," she said quietly, "and yet it feels like life keeps testing us." I nodded. "It does. But I think the difference now is that we're ready. We've learned how to face challenges together and how to trust in each other's strength. That's what matters." She leaned against me, resting her head on my shoulder. "I hope so," she whispered, "because I don't think I could go through all of this alone anymore." "You won't have to," I said softly. "Not now, not ever." The following days were filled with reflection and renewed commitment. We spent long evenings talking, revisiting the lessons of the past, and acknowledging both our fears and our growth. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't without moments of doubt, but every challenge strengthened our connection, reinforcing the trust and love we had worked so hard to rebuild. One night, as we prepared for bed, Emily turned to me with a gentle, almost shy smile. "I feel different now," she said. "Not just safer or calmer, but more myself. I've learned that I can face the past, confront the unknown, and still choose love. And I don't take that choice lightly anymore." I held her hand, feeling the warmth and certainty of her words. "Neither do I," I said. "And I know that whatever comes next, we can face it together." It was then I realized the most profound truth of all. Life is unpredictable, and challenges will never truly end. But the strength of a relationship, of love, of trust, lies not in avoiding hardship, but in meeting it together with patience, honesty, and unwavering commitment. And as I held Emily that night, I understood that the journey we had taken, the confessions, confrontations, healing, and growth, wasn't just about surviving past mistakes. It was about learning how to truly love, how to forgive, how to trust, and how to choose each other every single day, no matter the circumstances. Because that choice, I realized, was the essence of life, the essence of love, a commitment not to perfection, but to presence, understanding, and unwavering care. And in that quiet, reflective moment, I knew that no matter what storms lay ahead, we would face them, side by side, stronger than we had ever been. The days that followed the unexpected visit from our old friend were quieter, but in a comforting way. Not empty, not uneventful, but quiet in a way that allowed reflection to settle in, like soft rain soaking into the earth. Emily and I moved through our routines with a new sense of intention. Each word we spoke, each gesture we made, felt deliberate, measured, meaningful. The chaos of the past seemed farther away, though not forgotten. It had become a part of us, woven into the fabric of our shared life, reminding us of how far we had come. One morning, I watched Emily as she prepared breakfast. The sunlight fell through the window, casting a golden glow across her hair, highlighting the quiet strength in her movements. She looked peaceful, focused, yet radiant in a way that made my chest tighten, not with fear or worry, but with gratitude. Grateful that we had survived the storms, grateful that we had chosen each other, again and again, even when the path had been unclear. I poured myself coffee and joined her at the table. We ate in companionable silence, savoring the warmth of routine, the subtle joy of small moments. It was ordinary, yes, but ordinary had become extraordinary after all that we had endured. "I've been thinking," Emily said softly, breaking the quiet. Her voice carried the gentle weight of reflection. I looked at her, sensing the depth behind her words. "About everything," she continued. "The past, the mistakes, the fear, and us. How we've grown. How we've survived. I want to make sure I never take this for granted again." I nodded, squeezing her hand. "Me too. I've learned that the moments we share, the choices we make for each other, are what truly define us. And we have to nurture them every day." She smiled faintly, a mixture of joy and lingering vulnerability. "I don't want to lose that. I don't want to forget the lessons we've learned." "You won't," I said softly, "because we carry them with us, in how we act, in how we speak, in how we love. They're part of who we are now." We spent that day in quiet reflection, revisiting old photographs, letters, and memories, not to dwell on the past, but to appreciate the journey we had taken. We laughed at small moments of folly, remembered the tears that had once felt unbearable, and acknowledged the resilience it had taken to reach this point. Later that evening, we walked through the neighborhood, hand in hand, the sky painted in shades of lavender and orange. Children played in the distance, neighbors waved, and life moved on as it always had. But for Emily and me, everything felt subtly transformed. The world seemed softer, warmer, more forgiving. We had been through storms together, faced shadows from the past, and yet here we were, present, whole, and ready for whatever came next. "I feel at peace," Emily said quietly, resting her head on my shoulder. I smiled, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat against mine. "Peace isn't just the absence of trouble," I said. "It's the presence of trust, love, and understanding. And I feel that with you." She looked up at me, her eyes glistening. I never realized that peace could feel like this. Safe, steady, but also alive. "It's alive," I said softly, "because it's real. Because it's built on truth, honesty, and the choices we make every day." We spent the next few weeks deepening this understanding, creating moments that reinforced our bond. We cooked together, laughed over trivial mishaps, shared quiet evenings on the porch, and supported each other through small challenges. Each experience, each choice, reinforced the lessons we had learned, that love requires patience, forgiveness, empathy, and courage, that trust can be rebuilt, even after it has been fractured, and that the past, while never forgotten, does not have to dictate the present. One afternoon, Emily suggested a small ceremony, just the two of us, in our backyard. She wanted to celebrate the journey we had taken, the challenges we had faced, the lessons we had learned, and the love we had nurtured. We lit candles, shared reflections, and silently acknowledged the growth and resilience that had brought us here. "I feel stronger now," Emily whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "Not because I'm fearless, but because I know we can face anything together. And that's more important than being perfect or having a flawless past." I held her hand, feeling the warmth and certainty in her words. Exactly. Love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other, every day, through everything. And we've done that, Emily. We've chosen each other, over and over. As the candles flickered, casting a soft glow around us, I reflected on the lessons we had learned. That fear, though natural, cannot be allowed to dominate our lives. That honesty, though sometimes painful, is the foundation of trust. That forgiveness, for ourselves and each other, is essential for healing. And that love, nurtured with patience, empathy, and courage, can endure even the most challenging storms. I realized then that these lessons weren't just for Emily and me. They were universal truths about life and human connection. Life will always bring challenges, past mistakes, and moments of doubt. But the way we respond, the choices we make, and the love we nurture determine the course of our lives. That night, as we lay together under the stars, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Grateful for the past, with all its trials. Grateful for the present, with its calm and connection. Grateful for the future, knowing that whatever comes, we are prepared, together. "I love you," Emily whispered, her voice carrying the weight of sincerity and the quiet strength she had cultivated over time. "I love you too." I replied, feeling the depth of those words, knowing that our love had been tested, strengthened, and made real through every challenge. And in that quiet, reflective night, I understood the truth I had been learning all along. Love is not the absence of hardship. Love is the presence of trust, patience, courage, and unwavering commitment. And when nurtured with these qualities, love can endure anything, overcome any shadow, and grow stronger with every step taken together. We fell asleep holding each other, feeling fragile yet resilient, aware of the past but not controlled by it, and filled with hope for the future. And I knew, deep in my heart, that this was the love we had always sought, the kind that survives, that grows, and that transforms us into better versions of ourselves. Because the greatest lesson I had learned through all the secrets, confessions, confrontations, and healing was this: life is unpredictable, and people are imperfect, but love, real love, endures when it is chosen consciously, nurtured patiently, and faced honestly every single day. And in that enduring choice, I found peace, gratitude, and the quiet certainty that we had finally arrived home. The morning light filtered softly through the curtains, painting the room with warmth and calm. I lay awake for a while, listening to the quiet rhythm of Emily breathing beside me. It was a peaceful moment, one that felt sacred, almost fragile in its perfection. After all we had endured, the secrets, the betrayals, the fears, the confrontations, and the slow, painstaking rebuilding, this quiet morning felt like a reward we had earned. I thought about the journey we had taken together. Every tear, every sleepless night, every difficult conversation had led us to this moment. The past was still a part of us, but it no longer held power over our present or our future. We had faced it honestly, confronted it bravely, and emerged stronger and closer because of it. Emily stirred beside me, opening her eyes and smiling softly. "Morning," she whispered. "Morning," I replied, feeling the calmness of the day settle over me. We spent that morning quietly, sipping coffee and speaking softly about our plans, our dreams, and our simple desire to continue building a life together. There was no rush, no pressure, just presence. And in that presence, I realized that the most meaningful moments are often the quiet ones, filled with understanding, empathy, and shared commitment. Later, we took a walk through the neighborhood, hand in hand, feeling the gentle warmth of the sun on our skin. The world felt ordinary, yet extraordinary, because we had learned to see it through a lens of gratitude and awareness. Each step, each shared glance, each touch carried weight, the weight of survival, growth, and conscious choice. "I've been thinking," Emily said as we walked, "about how much we've changed, how much we've learned. And I realized something important. Love isn't about avoiding pain or fear. It's about choosing each other, every day, even when life isn't perfect." I nodded, holding her hand a little tighter. "You're right," I said. "Love isn't about perfection. It's about courage, patience, honesty, and commitment. And we've built that, together." We paused by the small park near our house, watching children play and neighbors chatting. Life moved on around us, indifferent to the trials we had faced, yet somehow more meaningful because we had survived, because we had chosen each other, because we had learned the lessons that truly matter. I thought about the secrets that had once threatened to destroy us, about the fears that had kept us apart, and about the misunderstandings that had shadowed our lives. They were still there, in memory, but they were no longer chains. They had become teachers, guiding us toward empathy, patience, and understanding. "Do you ever think about the past?" Emily asked softly, glancing at me. "Of course," I said, "but I don't let it control me. The past is a lesson, not a sentence. It reminds me to appreciate the present, to choose wisely, and to nurture the love we have now." She smiled, a quiet, serene smile that spoke volumes about trust, peace, and renewed hope. "Then I'm ready," she said. "Ready to live fully, without fear, without guilt, without holding back. Ready to love, really love, knowing that we've faced everything together." And I felt the same. I realized that the greatest strength of our love wasn't that it had survived hardship, but that it had grown through it. That every challenge, every painful truth, every secret we had confronted had shaped us into something resilient, authentic, and profound. We returned home, carrying the peace of that walk with us. Inside, the house felt warm and alive, not because of the furniture or decorations, but because of the love, understanding, and quiet joy that now filled it. It was ordinary, yes, but ordinary in the most extraordinary way. That night, as we sat together on the porch, the stars shining above, I reflected on the lessons our journey had taught us. Honesty is the foundation of trust. Without it, love cannot survive. Fear cannot dictate your life. Facing it together makes it manageable. Forgiveness heals both the giver and the receiver. Holding on to past mistakes only prolongs pain. Love is a daily choice. It requires patience, courage, empathy, and commitment. The past shapes you, but it does not define you. How you respond today matters more than yesterday's mistakes. Emily leaned her head on my shoulder, her warmth grounding me in the present. I feel complete, she whispered. Not perfect, but complete. I corrected gently, and she laughed softly, the sound like a balm to my soul. Yes, she said. Complete, whole, and ready for whatever comes next. In that quiet, reflective moment, I realized the truth I had been learning all along. Life is unpredictable, people are imperfect, and love is not always easy. But love, when nurtured with honesty, patience, and courage, endures. It grows stronger with each challenge faced, each fear confronted, and each choice made to stay and care for each other. And that, I understood fully, is the lesson worth carrying. The heart will always find its way through fear and pain, but only if we are brave enough to face life together, honestly, and with empathy. Only then can love transform us, heal us, and guide us to peace. As the night deepened, we held each other close, listening to the gentle rhythm of the world around us. And I knew, with a quiet certainty that filled me from chest to soul, that we had arrived, not at perfection, but at something far more meaningful, a love that is real, resilient, and enduring. Because life will always have its storms. But when you face them together with honesty, patience, and courage, the love that survives is the love that lasts. And in that lasting love, I found home.